How about the Tour de la Provence? This is in France, like I said, 4-day stage race, including a stage at Mont Ventoux. The Mont Ventoux stage only went up to the chalet. You might remember a few years ago when they had Chris Froome fell. They had the wreck with Richie Porte. They go into the back of the motorbike. Chris Froome is running up the road. Well, that's where they ended up that day. Thomas de Gendt, I think, ends up winning on that day. The final day, the stage up there, not the final stage, but that stage up there, up to halfway up. They didn't go to the top that day in the Tour because that, I think, that's 2017 maybe, because they won, or 2018, because they wanted to, or they couldn't because of the high winds. So they had all this crowd pushed down lower slopes, and, instead of spreading it out 21K, it was all back in the bottom 9K there. Anyway, so this race, there's probably snow on the top of Ventoux, so they're going to go up there. Anyway, stage 1 starts out. You got a sprint going on here. The bad boy of French cycling, bad boy of cycling in general, Nasser Bouhanni, stage 1 sprint, and it's got some bendy roads. He did a good job of popping himself out and getting the win for Arkea Samsic. Little note of things to come. Good for him. And then stage 2, up and down most day with the finish uphill in the last 2.3K. And we're going to start off with some of the highlights for that. And look, you've got Vlasiv, I think, for Astana. And here we go. And he ends up taking some time. He hands out. He ends up getting the win. Everyone else just kind of, it was a weird day for watching the actual climbers, because even though it was a climbing stage, you had Barguil getting kicked out, and I think it wasn't maybe possibly hard enough for everyone. And then you end up seeing kind of a mishmash of riders coming into the finish for the rest of them. Not Wilco Kelderman, Thibaut Pinot was kind of in there. Sepp Kuss is kind of in the back section. But it wasn't too much of an impressive split off. If you watched any of the video on that, you're going to see that the climb just wasn't hard enough to make that much of a. So yeah, Vlasov, Wilco Kelderman, Magnus Curt, some of those others are there. All right, profile for the next day, as you can see there, it ends up on Mont Ventoux. And we start off on Mont Ventoux stage with coming into it. It's not a long stage, but you've got, there you go. So you see the last 9K kicks up to the top of the climb there, and up to the Cat 1. They're giving that a Cat 1 billing. All right. Remy Cavagna, you might remember, he's off in a break. He's got 30-some K to go. He's sliding around these corners, and you're like, oh, I remember Remy Cavagna. Yeah, Tour of California. Look how I corner here. I don't know how to go down to the left-hand corner. Okay, and I'm showing some of this of Remy Cavagna in the Tour of California and his descending, only to kind of compare it to what he was doing now. He ends up, I don't know if he did some off-season training, but man, he is taking much different lines. You can see he's sliding over. He's actually committing to the corners, which is part of the problem that you were seeing him before. He wasn't committing. He was more upright. And man, he's really at this point bending himself, twisting over, and giving himself a much better opportunity to get down the road. And getting down the road in a way that doesn't look like it's going to kill him. All right, so 30-some K. He hits the climb, 9K to the finish. And he's already got about 2.5-minute lead at this point. He had his lead up to around 5 minutes. So you're like, could you do it? I think Eros Poli, I don't know if you remember that name, back in the 80s or 90s, he had taken 20-some minutes over the top of Ventoux. And actually the finish at that day went over the top, but he ended up by the top of that climb, holding on to like a minute or two, and I think he won the stage. Anyway, 7K to go here. This is kind of where you're going to see a resurgence of Nairo Quintanna. He's got, some decent climbers in here with him. Vlasiv of Astana is there, Lutsenko. But you got Nairo Quintanna, Sepp Kuss right in the mix here, Hugh Carthy, Thibaut Pinot. And our guys are already getting split off the back. And you have Nairo Quintanna just having his teammate 7K here, pushing it. Remember, they only have to go, halfway up this climb, so it's not such a bad deal. But Nairo Quintanna, he hasn't really been the bold rider that he was back in 14 to 16 or so. And here he goes. He hits it, and Sepp Kuss decides to go with him. It's probably to Sepp Kuss's ultimate demise as far as top in this race, because he can't do it. And it's wisely he actually sits up, but he should have actually probably sat up a little bit more, because then you see Nairo here, 7K. He is blitzing himself up the road, and he is not to be seen again. Behind you got Lutsenko, you got Hugh Carthy, you have a few Thibaut Pinot's getting distance. Vlasov, who is the stunner rider that was in the leader's jersey up to this point, he's already been distanced. But Sepp Kuss decides that he's going to continue out, and Lutsenko has been in the news lately. Maybe you remember him. He was the one that was rumored, along with his teammate Jakob Fuglsang, to have been working with Dr. Michele Ferrari. By the way, he doesn't take a look at Hugh Carthy, super skinny climber. Sepp Kuss, little guy, little climber. Nairo Quintanna, another little climber. Lutsenko, that's not so much. He's a little bit different body build than you would expect from those others. 4K, Nairo's lead has been now growing up to a minute. Very impressive. He just keeps putting the pedal down and getting further and further. Vlasov has now decided to step it up. I don't know why he was having trouble to begin with, but he ends up pulling himself back up to Lutsenko and Hugh Carthy, who have now gone through Sepp Kuss. Sepp Kuss is back with, there's a Ineos rider. I'm trying to remember his name. We'll get that probably here at some point. Thibaut Pinot is another one, and then Sepp Kuss. Sepp Kuss still, during this climb, he keeps trying to get away from the group he is and up to Hugh Carthy. He can't quite do it, but he's got enough punch in him that you can tell he's almost there. And I think you give him a few more years. First of all, this is a pretty impressive climbing group that you have in general, especially with Nairo there. Nairo ends up putting the time up to this section. I think he ties it or he beats it overall for the best time. Hugh Carthy tries to drop Lutsenko and Vlasov several times. Like I said, Nairo ends up getting the fastest time recorded up to the chalet, I think, at this point, or at least ties it. Some things to keep in mind. This is, typically when they're doing Mont Ventoux, you're going to do, he's inside 200K, but when you're doing Mont Ventoux during the tour, it's, stage 10 to 15 around there, and you've already been worn down. You've done a long stage. This is not the same thing, and typically the time's all the way up to the top as well. So, look, first thing your reaction might be, oh, my word, Nairo, he puts his time up there faster than Pantani, and you know what Pantani means, blood doping, the whole thing. But I think like I said, you've got to step back just a little bit and say, what was the circumstances that Pantani's done it under compared to Nairo? Stage 3 of a La Provence race. He's probably not at all worn out. He's had the whole winter to rest up. Comes across the line, crosses himself, ends up getting a nice win. And behind, Hugh Carthy is still trying to do what he can to get back up to at least a second place. I think there's some time bonuses here. So Vlasov is the leader overall. He's still worried about, his placing overall. And Lutsenko decides to, okay, well, we're going to take at least, I guess his thinking for that is instead of leading Vlasov up, he's going to take the time bonus away from Hugh Carthy. But I don't think Hugh Carthy was a detriment overall. You're really looking through Nairo above. So maybe a little weirdness between Lutsenko, Vlasov right there. And then you see, look, gonna have to give it to Sepp Kuss. I think as an American, we're pretty excited. He won the stage last year in the 2019 Vuelta a España. He ends up popping himself out here to the side and getting a 7th place, I believe, on the day. So look, Nairo, well-deserved win on Ventoux. Anytime you win on Ventoux, Alpe d'Huez, it's, signature climb. I don't care if you're only going up to the chalet and, tree line and you're not going all the way to the top. Still 9Ks this time of year. Him riding in his new team, new kit, Arkea Samsic, Nairo Quintanna, Lutsenko in second, a minute and a half back. So he took a minute and a half on those guys. Hugh Carthy is no slouch climbing. Vlasov, Eddie Dunbar over Sepp Kuss, and the rest. You saw Chad Haga, 3:45 down, 19th place on the day, just around the Warren Barguil stage. So Domenico Pozzovivo and a few others. Nairo Quintanna takes the overall win over Vlasov by 1:04. Lutsenko in second, 1:28. Hugh Carthy, Kelderman, Sepp Kuss, 8th place, 2:26. Well done. Pretty exciting. David Godot down there in 10th place overall. And Sam Uman, 20th. Warren Barguil, 15th. Maybe Barguil's going to be a little bit replenished for the next year. So coming to stage 4, for me, it was pretty exciting. You wake up, I was watching this. Ian Garrison, he is in the break all day. These guys, look at this. So you've got 50-some seconds. There's about 16K. They're going to crest the top of a climb. And you expect, and the climbers have been shutting this thing down. They had several minutes. And at this point, they're about to crest over the top. And like I said, only 16K with 50-some seconds. But here's what the problem is behind. The problem behind is these guys didn't want Bahani or some of these other sprinters. So the climbers teams and Lutsenko and his Astana team, they wanted the win as well. So they end up putting the fire to themselves and the whole squad, or the whole peloton, to the point where they get rid of the sprinters. Okay, well, you come over the top. You've got, 50 seconds down on these 4 guys up front, but you've got 4 guys, at least 3 guys that are pretty damn good time trialists. And with that, you're depleted your own peloton to the point where you don't have the sprinters teams to do some chasing. So in the end, it comes down to the last K. These guys still have 10 seconds. You got the one Conti rider. He takes a shot at Bramley and Owen Duell, and then Ian Garrison, the American, on DeCoin Quick Step. And they have a last, 7/10 of a kilometer here. They're only up by 8 seconds. How was the pack not? And who was leading on the pack? You had EF Education first. I don't know who they were racing for, kind of in the sense for this last kilometer. Once again, 8 seconds. There's someone in between the field and these 3 guys. The Continental rider takes a shot at it. In the end, you have Israel Startup Nation, Bramley, and then Owen Duell. Owen Duell, not the time trialist, but a little bit more of a sprinter than these other guys. He ends up taking the post-up win. Big one. Remember, 50 seconds coming in the last 16K, 10 seconds the last few kilometers, and they couldn't shut it down. Partly, why? Because they didn't have a sprinters team to do so. So in the end, Nairo Quintanna, he ends up getting his overall GC win, Tour de la Provence. Starts the season out pretty well. You're going to be able to see the finish here one more time. Ian Garrison, we've talked about him, U23. He lit it up last few years. He got his chance this year with DeCoin Quick Step. And in his first big race, he gets a podium. So what more you want from that? Owen Duell wins that. Bramley is second. Ian Garrison, third place. And overall, Nairo Quintanna with Vlasov in second and Lutsenko in third. Hugh Carthy down there in fourth. So look, great to see that. Once again, Ian Garrison in the sprint, in the break. And what more can you ask for that, huh?